Welcome to Self-Defense with Laurie. Let's jump in. Bit about me. So I spent 10 years in law enforcement in the UK. I did uniform response work, responding to emergency calls. I was a detective and then the equivalent of a special agent for a while as well at Scotland Yard. I hold a karate black belt, which was awarded by the chief instructor of the Japan Karate Association. I've done some follow-up training in Krav Maga and other systems and take part in local defensive pistol and rifle shooting competitions. A couple of statistics. I'm based in DC currently. Violent crime reduced in 2025 by almost a third, which is good news. However, there are still almost 2,500 violent crimes that were recorded. The takeaway is, even though violent crime is reducing, it's still a risk. It's going to be a risk in pretty much every major city. And having some self-defense skills and some kind of like techniques and awareness can help offset some of this risk. Okay, what is and what isn't self-defense? What isn't self-defense, first of all? So it's not about winning fights. It's not about standing up for what you believe in to the point of causing some kind of physical altercation, especially one that you end up getting injured in. It's not about learning like special techniques where you involve some like specific pressure point that has some magical effect. And it's not about being able to walk away from some violent altercation without any injuries whatsoever. If you're unfortunate enough to be forced into a position where you do end up physically engaged with somebody, chances are you probably will get some injuries. The hope is that they'll be minor in nature. What is self-defense? So first of all, I think this is the takeaway probably for the whole slide deck, which is the best fight is the one that you never have. There are a series of tactical options that you have, and usually the one which is least desirable is getting into a fight with somebody. We want to try and find what all the other off-ramps that we can attempt, or we can consider at least, before ending up in that position. It's about planning. It's about making smart choices to avoid unnecessary risk and danger in the first place. It's about having a heightened awareness of who and what's going on around us. It's about being able to make accurate, dynamic risk assessments of physical risk. So this is where we might have to make a decision quite quickly, and we can very quickly in our head recognize what our options are and select the one that is optimal to avoid us or someone that we are with from getting injured. It's identifying and selecting those tactical options under pressure. It's using effective physical force when required to protect yourself and others. So that's where those physical techniques come into play. And it's carrying out post-incident follow-up. So addressing injuries, contacting law enforcement, if you've had credit cards that are stolen, getting them cancelled and so on and so forth. Quick note on victim blaming. So when a violent assault takes place, the person who is at fault is always the suspect, the perpetrator. That is non-negotiable. However, if there are reasonable steps that we can take to avoid us from getting into the situation where we become a victim, then it would be wise to consider those and then make a risk-informed decision whether we think taking that option is worth the offset of the risk or not. Section 3, I want to talk a little bit about planning when it comes to self-defense. So this could include topics like, are you actually familiar with the area that you are going to? If not, is it possible to get dropped off directly at the address rather than having to walk through an unfamiliar neighborhood from a bus station or a bus stop or a train station? If you're going to be out late, what are your options to get back? What are your transport options? Is it an area that's well serviced by ride shares? What time is the last train, for example? If you're going with somebody, are they going to be drinking? Do you have a designated driver? What are your return options? Consider sharing your location from a phone with a friend. So you can do this via Google Maps, or if you're using a ride share at the time, often they'll provide the option to have someone follow your ride, including sharing location. And if you're walking, what's the best route to actually use? It might be that a slightly longer route is going to be safer. It might be better lit, it might be a busier route, and so on and so forth. So planning can actually avoid us from getting into the situation where we do end up in a physical altercation in the first place. Going back to that, the best fight is the one we never have mentality. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about awareness, and this feeds into the topic we just covered. But when it comes to avoiding nasty situations, if we're not aware of them in the first place, very often it will be too late to actually avoid it. If we're aware of something earlier on, we can consider our tactical options. We'll have more options, including avoiding the situation because we're aware of it earlier, which puts us in a safer position. So this is a system that's fairly commonly used, and it just describes different levels of awareness that people have when we're out and about. It's Cooper's colours, and it ranges from white through until red. So white is where most of us are when we're out and about, particularly if in an area that we're familiar with. We're kind of head down, we know where we're going, we're not really that aware of who's around us or what's going on, we're just walking from A to B. Yellow is where we have a heightened state of awareness, and we are aware of who is around us. We know what's going on across the street. We're aware of cars going past and all this kind of stuff. Orange is where we've actually identified a potential threat. So we've spotted something because we were already in that yellow state. We're actually aware, and we noticed something that's concerned us, and we're going, okay, I've noticed this over here. I'm going to be considering what my options are if that becomes a problem. Okay, maybe I'll choose to cross the road. Maybe there's another option that I can take that's going to avoid that potential threat. And red is when we actually have to take action. So that thing that we spotted that we were maybe a little bit concerned about has developed, and it could be that we actually now have to do something about it. So maybe it's someone that we spotted that we were concerned about. Now they've kind of moved across into a position where we think they're kind of blocking our path. Maybe they are going to try and engage with us in some way, don't like the look of it, and so we're now going to take action to avoid the situation. So the takeaway here really is white is the area that we want to really avoid. We don't want to be in that state at all when we're out and about. We want to kind of default to yellow. We want to be aware of, head up, who's coming towards us, being aware of left and right, using reflections from shop windows and things like that. Are we aware if there's someone behind us? All this kind of stuff. And once we're aware of what's going on around us, we have the information that we can make earlier decisions to avoid ending up in a situation we don't want to be in. So some practical considerations. Yeah, walking, head up, eyes up, being aware of who's around us, not just directly in front of us, but who's to the left and right, and so on. Trying to avoid being distracted by our phones. As we go past alleys, just having a little check. Anyone down that one? Anyone down that one? Considering the best path. So on a pavement or a sidewalk, depending on which country you're from, closer to the road, maybe that provides you more danger in the sense of being closer to traffic, particularly if you're in a country that kidnap is a risk. On the other hand, if you're really close to the building line, there is more of a danger of either getting pulled into doorways or being trapped against the wall. So it's a little bit of a trade-off of deciding where you position yourself, and that will depend on where you are. And being especially aware of who is kind of like really nearby when we're entering a building, to avoid having people like rush in behind us into a confined and secluded space. So a little bit about ride shares, so Ubers and Lyfts. Some things that you can consider. So before getting into the vehicle, confirm that the license or the tag on the vehicle actually matches what you're expecting on the app. The best seat available to you is the one behind the passenger seat. You can consider sharing your ride with a friend or family. Make sure that they're actually kind of like up and about and they're monitoring rather than just sending it blindly and assuming, because someone might have gone to sleep, for example. Consider if the driver is making phone calls during the ride, feel free to politely ask them to wait until they're finished with your ride. If you do have headphones in, you may not be able to hear the driver's side of the conversation as well. So just something to be aware of. And really, if something doesn't feel right, ask the driver to stop at a place that is safe and seek alternative transport. If the driver refuses to do this, you can consider calling the police, assuming that they've had a safe place to stop and they're refusing, and you'll provide them with your updated location as you're moving, and also the vehicle details as well, which you have in the app. You have the car make and the car color, and you have the registration plate of the vehicle as well. So for public transport, just a couple of things here. So buses, bus stops tend to be relatively close together. If there is one that has someone waiting at it and you're not really that comfortable there, consider walking to the next one or the previous one, whichever is closer. Similarly, if the bus stop is really poorly lit, if it's an area you don't really want to be hanging around in, if the one before or after is better lit, busier, you may wish to consider just walking a little bit to use an alternative bus stop. Also, providing you can actually stop the bus, or the bus is going to stop, you often don't actually have to be in the bus shelter itself. You can be a few paces away, by a shop door or something like this. So you don't necessarily have to be in that bus shelter, particularly if there's someone there that you're a little bit uncomfortable about. Preferred seating closer to the driver and sitting in the aisle, so avoiding sitting in the window seat so you don't get trapped if someone comes in and sits next to you. Metro, subway, tube, depending on which city you're in. Prefer cars or carriages which are not empty. If there is someone in the car that you're in and you feel uncomfortable, feel absolutely free to change cars when you get to the next stop. Being closer to the doors does provide you a faster exit if required. They all have emergency buttons, so just as you get on, just clock where is it, so you know if you need it in an emergency. And similar to with buses, try and avoid the window seats, try and prefer the aisle seat. If someone else wants to take the other seat, sure, I'm going to move out of the way and let them sit in there, or I might even decide to stand, rather than avoid being trapped on the inside with someone on the outside. So now we're going to cover tactical options for self-defense. This is going to be the range of options that you consider once you've gone from your Cooper's colours yellow into orange or amber, where you've spotted something that concerns you and you're now starting to think, okay, if I need to take action, what are my options? So option number one could be to actually escape or avoid the risk in the first place. So this could be taking an alternative exit. So if you're in a shop, perhaps, or in a bar, and if there is something kicking off by one exit, there might be alternative exits. So maybe you can make use of that, get out, and avoid having to engage with that person in the first place. Could be crossing the road. So if you're aware, you're looking down the road, and you see something on your side that you would have to kind of negotiate, and you don't like the look of it, consider crossing the road so that you don't have to engage with whatever that potential threat is. Or it could be getting off or getting on public transport. So again, if you're on a bus or a train and a situation develops, you can get off. And similarly, if you are near, if there's buses pulling up and people getting on and there's something else developing on the street, it might be that even if that bus isn't necessarily going where you want to go, that is a good escape option just to get you away from where you are at that time. Same deal with taxis. If you can't escape or avoid, the next option is to kind of engage but like diffuse the situation a little bit. So talking about that de-escalation. So if you do have to engage, try to use a calm, polite but firm tone. So what we don't want to do is kind of become aggressive ourselves, because typically that results in the other person becoming more aggressive, or potentially just making the situation worse. Avoid getting into an argument. So who cares if the other person thinks that they're correct if you get away safely? It's not worth trying to have an argument about something that results in you getting injured. You can consider using empathy. So, if you are forced to converse with somebody, you can consider well, yeah, I understand that must be, that must be really bad, or that must be really frustrating. But the aim is still to be trying to find the opportunities to then disengage and look for escape options. You don't want to get into like a really long conversation and then to kind of not feel like you can get away. We're going to look at the Bataris box on the next slide, and that goes back to the idea of kind of escalation and de-escalation. And then the final tactical option, which is the one we don't want to use unless we really have to, is defend, and that is using physical defensive action, which we'll touch on very briefly. So this is the Bataris box. This came up quite frequently in officer safety training for me when I was back in law enforcement. And the idea here is that you start up in the kind of, let's say the top there, where you start talking about your own attitude. And the attitude that we have affects how we behave. So if I have an attitude of, well, I'm a bit aggressive, I'm angry, I'm going to sort this problem out, that will probably come out in my behavior. And the problem is that then my behavior will then impact the other person's attitude. And so if I'm starting to be a bit aggressive with my behavior, that's going to adjust the attitude for the other person. They're going to probably react to that, and their behavior will also become more aggressive. That then feeds back to me, and it kind of like escalates and spirals. So this is what we want to try and break out of by using some of those techniques that I spoke about on the previous slide. Okay, going to cover physical defense. We're going to cover some of this fairly briefly at a very high level. When doing kind of physical techniques, you're not going to learn this from just listening to me talk or from watching videos on YouTube. You have to actually practice it and kind of get the movement and also testing that movement under pressure. And this is where kind of self-defense classes and things like this are really valuable. But I do want to cover just at a high level some things that you could consider learning when it comes to self-defense. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about objectives and emotions. So if we've been forced to the point where we feel we have to use physical force to defend ourselves, then we have to absolutely use our force to the maximum of our strength and ability. I've written there, this is no time for half measures. And the reason for this is, if there is someone who is a physical threat to you and you hit them, but you don't hit them very hard, all you're going to do is make them much more angry. And they may even use that as a justification to kind of like assault you. So if you're in a position where you have to use physical force to defend yourselves, we use our full strength and our full power, and we only stop when we can escape or when that threat is effectively mitigated. And so the answer really to the question of how hard do I hit is as hard as possible. We keep fighting until we're confident that that threat is mitigated. And when under stress, our minds operate slightly differently. So adrenaline can make our fine motor skills much more difficult, for example. In the past, this is why when we were practicing things like handcuffing, we would do a load of kind of like physical exercise first, and it's surprising how difficult it is to do kind of more fine motor skill movements when you're under stress. And that is magnified when there's a physical threat as well. And we might not feel pain as much until afterwards. And it's also very easy to get tunnel vision. So this is where if there is a threat and we focus so much on it, we may miss things like opportunities to divert and escape, or we might miss other threats. So if we're really focused and engaged on one person, we might not see their friends come up or their friends come up to the side, for example. So a couple of things to be aware of there. And really the only way to kind of manage this is through training under stress, which is what I was referring to a minute ago. The real thing is still going to feel different, but just kind of being aware that these are effects that you might feel can hopefully make it slightly less of a kind of a shock at the time. Okay. So verbal commands. So if we are using in a position where we feel we're going to use physical defense, we will want to have the option of using verbal commands, and we will use verbal commands. There are a few reasons for this. It's possible the attacker might respond to them. Not very likely, but possible, so it's worth a shot. It also can help signal to others that you're not the aggressor, but you're defending yourself. The first thing that everyone does these days is get their phone out and start recording. And if you're shouting things like, "Stay back, get away from me," that's going to look better than what might appear like just laying into somebody. They'll also encourage you to breathe. So sometimes when we're very stressed, there is a tendency to kind of hold our breath and tense up. If we are using verbal commands, that's going to make us breathe out, and then hopefully we'll be naturally breathing in as well. So a typical example of this is, "Get back, stay away from me." So high level, going to cover a few things that if you're looking for a self-defense class, these are the types of things you might want to learn. So one of them is going to be like blocks, so avoiding getting hit, so blocks or evasion. So this will be if someone's attempting to strike you, one option is going to be moving backwards, so you're out of range, potentially moving to the side, or using a block where you're using your usually arm, although sometimes legs, to divert a strike that's coming towards you so that it doesn't hit you. Heel palm strikes. So often we will train using a heel palm to strike rather than using a fist. There's an example here of Sensei Kanazawa doing it. And yeah, it uses the heel of the palm, so this area. You're less likely to injure your hand doing this, and you can still generate a pretty significant amount of power. Target is typically the face as well. Elbow strikes. So this is for extremely close range. So if someone is kind of very, very close to you, or kind of even holding on to you, it might be that using an elbow strike is the appropriate tool. You can use lots of different angles. So you can use elbow strikes going upwards, coming in from the side, behind you, and there are lots of options. Targets are varied. It pretty much comes down to what can you hit, but face, ribs, groin, all good targets. Groin kick. So this is the objective is to lead with a knee and then snap your lower leg upwards. You pull your toes down and you make contact with the instep of your foot, the top of your foot. And the idea is that you kick through the person. You're not aiming to kick and stop, you're aiming to kick all the way through. So same as with all the other strikes, we kick as hard as we can. And as it says here, we can also do groin kicks by kicking up with our heel behind us. So if someone is kind of holding us from behind and are very close to us, sometimes we can use our heel and kick up behind and kick people in the groin as well. Knee strikes, so similar to elbow strikes, these are for very close range. Typical targets will be groin, potentially like solar plexus, just under the rib cage, particularly if someone's kind of bent over. If someone's in the position where we can strike them in the head, then that could be an option as well. So this is escapes. So wrist grab. So this is going to be as in the demonstration here, where someone's grabbed hold of a wrist. You fold your elbow kind of towards their elbow, as you see in the second picture, in order to escape the wrist grab. Rear bear hug. So this is where someone's grabbed us around the upper body, sort of from behind. So there are a couple of things we do here. One is we kind of drop our weight and take a step forward to give us a little bit of space. And then we send a flurry of strikes to the attacker, and we attack on both sides. We attack by striking backwards down to the groin on both sides, and we also strike upwards towards the face and head with our elbows on both sides as well. The reason we do both sides is because if someone's got their head over on one side, then throwing all your attacks over this side isn't going to hit them, so we want to alternate. Front joke. So this one, there'll be videos for all of these online that you can easily find, by the way. So front choke is hands around throat, up against a wall. And for this one, as you can see in the pictures, we are putting our hands in, plucking against the inside of the hands, try and get ourselves a little bit of space. And at the same time, we are kicking forward with a groin kick or a knee strike, depending on how close that person is. And from there, we're going to follow up with more strikes until we're in a position where we can safely escape. Strangleholds, there are a variety of these, but they all involve having an arm around the neck. So one of the things you want to do here, the biggest risk is cutting off blood flow and potentially airflow as well. So what we want to do first of all is drop our chin, so that as soon as we feel that arm come around, rather than letting the arm go under the chin and around our throat, let's drop our chin, preventing it from coming up against our throat. We're going to use both of our hands to grab hold of where that wrist is and pull it so we have a little bit of space. And from there, we're going to try and escape with our head and also carry out strikes as well. If we are unfortunate enough to end up on the ground, the first thing we want to do is not be on the ground. So we want to get up as fast as we can. However, if we don't have an opportunity because the person is kind of moving towards us at a rate that we can't get up safely, we'll adopt the position that is shown here, where we kind of like curl our body a little bit. We have one foot on the ground and the other one is up, which we'll use to kick out at the person if they come within range. The foot that's on the floor you can actually use to rotate yourself as well if they try and walk around to one side or the other. There's also a couple of notes there about if the attacker is on top of you, but really videos are going to do that a lot more justice than me talking about it. Okay, section 7 for self-defense, we're going to talk a little bit about weapons. We're going to focus mostly on pepper spray for this. So pepper spray is non-lethal and it has no lasting injury. And so the level of justification is going to be lower than using lethal force, for example, a gun. And pepper sprays are legal in all 3 DMV jurisdictions, so DC, Maryland, and Virginia. If you don't live in any of those, you can check online. There are a few different types when they all have like varying ranges and durations and usage. So if you do have one, just check which sort you have. The safety mechanisms also vary, so just make sure you're familiar with what the safety mechanism for the one that you've got. Some of them you twist, some of them they have a cap, so you have to put your thumb under it. Remember that when you're under pressure and adrenaline is high, that can affect our fine motor skills, and also not the time to start reading instructions, of course. We want to make sure that if we ever have to use it, we know and it's second nature. So a few different types. There's like a fog style cloud type one. That's the one that's I think that's the one in the first picture there. So for that, you kind of use it in an up and down motion. Second type is more of a stream. So that's the one in the middle. I think that's probably the more common one. And for that, it's typically aimed for the face and kind of go across it. So kind of ear to ear. And many of these now use like a gel. So it's similar to the stream and it kind of sticks to what it's hit. Tends to be less affected by wind, but is a shorter range. But the packaging that you have for your pepper spray should give you these details. So if you have pepper spray or some kind of self-defense spray, make sure that it's somewhere that's easy to access. So it's no good if it's buried like right down in a bag underneath loads of other things. If you're under pressure, it's a very high stress situation. You need to be able to put your hand and grab it immediately. You do not have time to start looking away and start reaching through your bag. If you can draw it early and hold it concealed, that's an option that you can consider, a tactical option. So if we go back to our Cooper's colours, if we get into orange and we recognize a potential threat, we think, not happy about this. It might be that we draw our spray and we just hold it covered in our hands in case we need it. And if we don't need it, that's fine. We just put it away again. And so there are a few ways you can do this. So it's you can hold it in your hands with your hands behind you. You can hold it in your hand with your arms kind of folded like this, so it's not on show. Or you can hold it kind of with your hands over each other like this, sort of in front of you as well. So there are a few options you've got. What you probably don't want to do is, if the situation hasn't developed, is kind of bring it out and start pointing it, because this could easily escalate the situation. Things to consider: distance. So if you're too far away, that stream may not reach that far. It's going to be harder to be accurate as well. If too close, well, first of all, if it's too close, it's too close. There's not much you can do about that. You still need to use it. But it may be more likely that you're going to still get attacked, even though you're able to deploy the spray. It's also, I guess, a bit more likely that you could be affected by the spray as well if it's someone who's very close to you. But that might be a risk that you just have to take. The way to use it is you hold it in your dominant hand and use the thumb to press the button, not the finger. And we covered how to spray. So for a single stream, it's back and forth across the face, and for a fog type, it's up and down. Consider using bursts, so like 1 to 2 second bursts, rather than like pressing and holding until it runs out, just in case you miss with that and then it's kind of, you've depleted it and you still need it. Beware of things like, if there's a strong wind and it's coming towards you, the likelihood is that a lot of that material is going to just spray back in your face. Similarly, if you're in a very confined area, there is a risk that you could become affected as well. They're not necessarily reasons to like completely not use it, but it's just something to be aware of. And once you've deployed it, look for that opportunity to escape. There's no need to like wait around. Did it work? Didn't it work? If you spray the person, you get a reaction, and you have an opportunity to escape, take it. Now to talk a little bit, this is I think a single slide, about post-incident handling when it comes to self-defense. So the first priority is to make sure that the threat has been truly mitigated. So if you have managed to perhaps calm the person down, or perhaps you've unfortunately had to use some kind of physical force on somebody and you think that threat is mitigated, don't hang around. Make sure that you are able to get away. Keep an eye on that person, just in case they do get back up and become a threat again. Any injuries, so if you need an ambulance, for example, or if someone around you needs an ambulance, call the ambulance. Emergency life support is not covered in this training. In case of robbery, so a few things: cancel your stolen credit cards. If there is a phone that's taken, most phones have an opportunity to, or functionality, I should say, to remote stun them. So iOS, you can put it in lost mode by going to icloud.com/find. Android has similar functionality that you can look up if you have an Android phone. And also you can look into whether you need to enable remote erase as well. So a couple of things there to consider. Self-defense legal. Okay, the caveat to this is I'm not a lawyer, I'm not qualified to give legal advice. But what I can tell you are some general principles that frequently hold true when it comes to the application of law and self-defense. So usually what is required is a reasonable belief of imminent threat. So that is a threat to me or to someone that is going to happen now, not something that's going to happen in 10 minutes time or an hour or tomorrow. It's a threat of something that's about to happen. And it has to be reasonably held. It has to be something that you would reasonably see as a threat. Allows proportional use of force. So that is the amount of force needed to mitigate the threat. An example of this which would not be proportional would be someone pushes you, you respond by shooting them, for example. The response is not going to be justified in that case. Or another example could be if there is a physical altercation, the other person falls to the floor, the opportunity at that point is likely to be for you to be able to escape, not to stand there and continually stamp on that person's head. At that point, that kind of self-defense principle kind of goes out the window. Some states there is a duty to retreat first. So this is where if there is an altercation between you and somebody, in some states law requires that you actually retreat first. That could be taking a couple of steps backwards, for example. There is an initial aggressor rule. So if you start the fight, then you're probably going to lose that right to self-defense. Defense of others and property, you may be able to defend others if they face an imminent threat. However, those same rules of reasonableness and proportionality still apply. And use of force to protect property alone, like preventing theft, is usually not justified unless that threat includes violence. So to summarize, the bottom line here is just remember that the best fight is the one that doesn't happen in the first place. That priority above everything else is to be able to avoid having to use physical force. If you are forced into a position where physical defense is required, then fight hard and do not give up. When you strike with maximum force against whatever targets are available to you. If you can select a target, then the more vulnerable targets are going to be preferable. So that's eyes, groin, throat, face, solar plexus, etc. We don't stop after just striking once. We stop when the threat is fully mitigated. So that could be they're on the floor, they backed off, or they're running away. And just recognize that things are probably not going to go to plan. These things get messy, adrenaline is high. If you do end up in a physical altercation, you probably will get some kind of injury, but that's okay. The aim is to survive without serious injury and to mitigate the threat. If you have any questions or you want to follow up, I'm here, happy to talk. Drop me an email. My email is here below, laurie@thegentleman.coach.